Hello and welcome to a very exciting video where I'm going to go over everything we know about the new Reflecting Mist crafting mechanic in 3.19 Kalandra League. Now, we just came off of a very powerful crafting method in 3.18 in Recombinators, and a lot of people took a look at this new one and kind of shrugged a bit. They went, this doesn't look nearly as good as Recombinators. I guess you can get some, big life values, but can that really stand up to a influenced ring? Well, I've been looking over and thinking through some of the things that are possible with this crafting mechanic. And while usually we have to wait 4 days to a week for some big streamer to tell us all the secrets long after everyone else has profited off of them, I thought, hey, how about I sit down and I go through everything that I think we can do to absolutely break this mechanic, so we all get to go in and completely break this mechanic within the first couple days of the league. If that excites you, then you should go ahead and subscribe to this channel because I suspect this is not the last video I'm going to make about how we can do some truly insane things with Reflecting Mist. First up, let's go through the basics of some of the things we know about how this mechanic works. The way we get access to the Reflecting Mist is through mirrored tablets. This is the league mechanic. I'm not going to go through it in depth, but there's a couple takeaways we need to talk about. First of all, these tablets can be itemized and sold, much like temples. So if you're really trying to gamble and make some huge GG item, you don't have to wait 20 to 30 maps to get a shot. You can just go to the trade site, buy the tablets, and run them, which means that there isn't necessarily a time gate to making some of these incredible items, just a currency gate. So if you can farm up enough currency, you can have a big crafting session and walk away with something insane. One other thing I want to know about these mirrored tablets is that it's very likely they use the same weighted area level system as Incursion and Synthesis. What this means is that you might be able to run low tier maps until you get one that's good, and then run tier 16 maps. And if you run enough tier 16 maps, the area level of the tablet might end up being tier 16. Depending on whether or not there's item level requirements based on area level or how the Reflecting Mists work, this might be very important if you're looking to farm these yourself. So then we get to the mechanic that this video is all about, the Reflecting Mists. So, the way these work is that when you get one in a reward tile, you can put in a ring or amulet from your inventory. Now, this has all the usual restrictions where it can't be fractured, synthesis, influence, corrupted, all that stuff. Just a vanilla ring or amulet. What then happens is it then splits up the mods into regular and reflected mods. The reflected mods will be inverted. They will have negative values and do the opposite of the thing they normally did. Then, all of the modifiers on the item will be multiplied by a multiplier. This multiplier is determined by the intensity of the mirrored tablet. The further away from the entrance you are when you use the Reflecting Mist, the bigger this multiplier is. So for instance, if you had a ring with plus 100 life and plus 100 mana, if the plus 100 life was kept normal and the mana was reflected, and you had a multiplier of 1.8 on this item, you would have 180 life and minus 180 mana. Now, when you do this, you get to pick between two. So half the mods will be reflected on one and half the ones will be reflected on the other, and it'll be inverse. So for instance, the choice on the left would have the life modifier at 180 life, but then the right option would have all the modifiers reversed, so that one would be minus 180 life. So if you only want one modifier, you're guaranteed to get it. You just pick the side that has the one modifier you care about. However, there are certain odds for each, depending on how many of the modifiers you care about. And we'll go over those in a little bit. Something that's of note, though, is that GGG has previewed items with a multiplier as high as 2.2 times. This is crazy, for reasons we'll get into later. But it's possible that this might go up even higher, which could result in some truly insane items, as I'm going to show you in the later half of this video. Some modifiers don't necessarily have intuitive things for what's going to happen to them when they're reflected. So plus life becomes minus life, but what about some other modifiers? Well, we don't really know for all of them yet, but GGG did post this example image of what happens to some of them. Physical damage added to attacks then becomes physical damage added to attacks against you. And life regeneration becomes a life degeneration. So some of these perhaps don't matter with the inverted ones. For example, do you really care if enemies are going to leech life if you're just going to delete them or do way more damage than they could possibly leech anyways? Maybe not. In which case, some of these modifiers could end up being dead modifiers if they're negative. which is what you're going for. So let's take a second to talk about the odds. This is a table of what I believe to be the correct odds for getting any given number of modifiers that you need on a rare item with any given number of modifiers. So for instance, if you have a 6 mod item and there's 3 that you want to be the ones that are boosted and not inverted, your odds of getting that item each time you chuck it in are only 10%. However, if you only care about getting 2 of those items that are both together and are both multiplied, then you have a 40% chance. Of note is that 6 and 5 mod items have the same odds to get the same number of modifiers you need. What this means is that 5 mod items are kind of strictly better than 6 mod items, because if you hit the 3 modifiers you need, you'll only have 2 modifiers that are reflected, providing downsides. And 2 downsides is a lot better than 3. Also, if you take a look at the odds from this list, there's pretty much no reason to ever use 3 or 4 mod items. The odds for getting 2 modifiers you need on a 4 or 3 mod item are worse than they are for a 6 and 5 mod item. So with exalts perhaps being cheap, if you find a 3 or 4 mod item, you may just slam it with some exalts before tossing it into the reflecting miss. So 2.2 times modifier is pretty good. What if I told you we can do better with catalysts? A lot of people seem to be sleeping on this, but catalysts will allow you to boost those modifiers even further. Not only that, but they'll let you target the modifiers that you want to get. So the downsides won't be modified, but the upsides will. Now, we don't necessarily know if catalyst quality is going to stack additively with the multiplier or multiplicatively. If it's multiplied, oh my god, that could get really nutty. In fact, I think it might be. But once again, we're going to have to wait till this goes live to see. However, because you have to apply the catalyst to the rare item before chucking into the reflecting miss, catalysts might become insanely expensive this league. But that might be a good tip. Maybe it'll be very profitable for you to farm catalysts this league. Something to find out. Another interesting interaction with this mechanic is certain heist bases. So Heist has some base items that you can only get through Heist. And a couple of these are very interesting for this mechanic. There are 2 rings which let you have one more prefix modifier or suffix modifier at the cost of the other. And this Amulet, which has fewer modifiers but 25% increased effect. Well, if that stacks multiplicatively with both the reflecting miss multiplier and catalysts, you could get some obscenely huge values on amulets. And if you have only 1 or 2 mods that you care about, that could get crazy. So let's talk about how you can really break this mechanic. How do you get the most out of having a few supercharged mods? There's a couple ways to go about it. The first one is if you have some modifiers that are just so good for you that one modifier is worth more than all the modifiers in the rest of the ring combined. So here are some examples of powerful modifiers on rings that some people might want to boost to insane levels. For instance, 4 to 7 added cold damage for frenzy charge. Imagine if you had 3 times that amount per frenzy charge on both of your rings. You could do some crazy things with that. Or flat mana cost reduction. That seems pretty good. Hey, what if you had the incursion plus max life and percent increased life? What if you tripled those values? So you had about plus 300 life and 6% increased maximum life on each of your rings. That seems like it would be pretty bonkers. Of note is that some builds care a lot more about modifiers on rings and amulets than others. For instance, Minions just received an overhaul with a special base type, meaning that Minion builds are going to get a lot of their power from ring slots. If you have, for instance, 3 modifiers, all of which boost your Minion damage, and then you double those and have one of those in each of your ring slots, you could be looking at 120, 150% increased Minion damage, 40% Minion attack speed. I mean, things could get truly nutty. If your build has a ring modifier that does a lot for you, you could get a lot out of this mechanic. Another thing to look at is the possibility that some modifiers might be unaffected by being reflected. Now, we don't really know what's going to happen to these modifiers in particular. For instance, there are 2 crafted modifiers that have no numerical values. Will you just be able to get light radius based on your energy shield as a free craft on a 5 mod item before chucking it into the reflecting miss? You might. Delve Curse on hit rings are similarly interesting. If they simply reverse the values, this would become curse enemies with conductivity on hit with 40 to 50% reduced effect. You'd rather it didn't have reduced effect, but for a negative modifier, that's actually one that would still be beneficial to your build. If you got +1 max curses somewhere, you could actually fit in an extra curse to your build with what is supposed to be a modifier that's detrimental to you. Another big question mark is what happens to the bestiary crafts, which grant a specific level of a skill? Are those unaffected? It seems possible that none of these will be unaffected, and GGG thought of this. But if any of them slipped through, being able to turn a super boosted item from 3 beneficial mods to 4 or 5 beneficial mods could be ridiculously powerful. So this is definitely something to keep an eye on once we can play around for ourselves. Another way to break this mechanic would be anyone who uses Doryani's prototype. So Doryani's prototype is a weird unique that benefits from you stacking as much negative lightning resist as possible. Well, this league, this will be obscenely easy. And in fact, one of those reflected modifiers, which is supposed to be a downside for you, could become an upside. All you have to do is get a big value of negative lightning resist. So if you're looking at a 5 mod item and 3 of those are boosted positive ones, one of the boosted negative ones is lightning resist, you're only looking at 1 downside. So if you get something that just doesn't affect your build, like minus maximum energy shield when you don't even have energy shield on your build, that could be a ridiculously powerful item for you. So now I want to put all these together and talk a bit about some of the truly insane crafts that you can do with this mechanic. And I'm going to focus on amulets, because I think those are the most interesting examples. The first one is, I think, a craft that everyone should be looking to do within the first couple days of the league, and that's making a basic starter +2 amulet. Now, that might sound ridiculous to you, a starter +2 amulet? What? But no, with this mechanic, if you get even a single reflecting miss with enough intensity to have a 2x multiplier for an item, you can 100% guarantee get yourself a +2 amulet. All you need is any amulet with +1 to level of gems, either the general one or one for whatever main skill your build is using, and you just toss that into the reflecting mists and pick whichever one has +2 gems on it. Getting what is effectively an Ashes of the Stars within the first couple days of the league for almost free would be an insane boost to character power. I think as soon as you get to maps, you should be looking to make one of these amulets as soon as possible. But if that's the starter, basic +2 amulet, where can you go from here? Well, how about a better +2 amulet, like this one? So this one, you're bumping your odds down from 100% to 10%, so it'll take a couple tries. But if you get an amulet that has +1 to level of gems, some defensive stat you care about like life, and then some other stat you care about, for instance, damage over time multiplier on this one. You toss 10 of those into reflecting mists, and one of them is going to pop out and look something like this. This is more powerful than some of the most powerful +2 amulets that we've seen even in Sentinel League. I mean, who needs Ashes of the Stars when you can just make something like this for yourself? And let me tell you something, this is only the start. Because we know we can at least double the values of items, you can do much better than a +2 amulet. How about a +4 amulet? And we're going to call this the starter +4 amulet because all that's on this is +4. So this is obviously a pretty expensive craft. But all you really need is the +2 to level of gems, and the other mods can, and in fact should, be garbage. Then you just toss into the reflecting mists, and you have a 1 in 4 chance of getting something like this back. Even if you get one of these that has actual downsides on it, that are downsides to your build, the power of getting +4 in an amulet would be more than enough to offset that. I think this is going to be a big, very powerful craft that a lot of people are going to go for. And even if it ends up costing you a dozen divines or so, you would happily pay that. But for people who are willing to push further, you can do a lot better with one of these +4 amulets. You can get something like this. So you can still get all the power of the +4, but then you get one other stat that is juiced up to insane levels. How about 194 life on a +4 amulet? Sounds good? Sounds pretty good to me. I would definitely like one of these. Now, this is maybe a post-Mage Blood sort of item, which puts it out of reach for a lot of players, but certainly this is going to make any +2 amulets be insanely valuable. And you might want to look into crafting them yourself or maybe doing Expedition or Rogue to try to generate them for a profit. But if you can get one of these, I mean, this is just so insane compared to the power level of past leagues. The fact that not only is this possible, but it's reasonably attainable. I mean, this isn't going to cost mirrors. It might cost between 30 to 80 divines, or it might cost the same as a mage blood, but the amount of raw power you're getting for that price is ridiculous. But what if I told you that there's a chance that we could do better than this? Now, this might sound crazy to you, but what if I told you there's a good chance that not only can we make +4 amulets, but we might be able to make +6 amulets? Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Patrick, you have truly lost your mind. There is absolutely no way GGG would have the multipliers for the Reflecting Mists scale up enough that you could get triple values on an amulet. And you know what? I think you're right. I suspect that it probably won't go much more than a little bit higher than the 2.2 times multiplier that we've seen so far. What if I told you it didn't have to go that much higher than that? Think back to earlier in this video when I talked about the Heist base. Do you remember when I talked about the Simplex Amulet? That amulet has an implicit on it, 25% increased explicit modifier magnitudes. Well, if this stacks multiplicatively with the Reflecting Mist multiplier, then we would only need a 2.4 times multiplier in order to get +3 for each of these gem modifiers. Meaning that you could make a +6 amulet. And considering they've already showed 2.2 times multiplier, something like this is quite plausible. Given that these Simplex Amulet bases from Heist might be worth their weight in divines. This is what all the rich players are going to be trying to make if this is possible. And yeah, they'd be right to do so. This could push a lot of people to Heist, and, maybe GGG knew what they were doing when they put Heist on the Atlas device this league, huh? Now, the odds for actually hitting this are not great. You'd only have a 1 in 3 shot. And considering that it would probably cost you a fortune to craft the base to begin with before you chuck the thing in, this is not a cheap craft. And keep in mind, because these items come out mirrored, nobody will be able to offer mirror services for these items. Each one of these items will be a one-of-a-kind item. Certainly, I'm going to be aiming to get one of these this league, regardless of how expensive it turns out to be. So that's the craziest thing that I could come up with that this crafting system makes possible. A lot is still unknown about this league, however, so you should check the comments to see if I have any pinned comments with any corrections or updates. And if there's any crazy crafts that you've thought of that you think will be possible, go ahead and leave a comment. I'm really excited to see what things you guys come up with. Thank you so much for watching. If this video was helpful to you, go ahead and subscribe and hit that like button. I'm a new channel and every little bit really helps out a ton. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.